to be dialing fundamentals when talking to merchants. So, as you guys remember, last week we covered the basics of just these merchant conversations, what we're looking to do to accomplish the deal from the crypto only side, because again, we're focusing on crypto first, which naturally leads to credit cards being discussed. And then we had to cut off at the dialing portion. So, that's what we're going to cover today. So, before we get into that, let me see who is watching this live. Let me just pop open the comments, guys. Give me 1 second. Where is it at? All right, there we go. So I have David Shores, 551 EST. There we go. Maletta, we have you in Ayersville, Georgia, and then we're Lewisburg, Tennessee. He's working the day job in 2 different states. Awesome. So getting to take advantage of that. We have Atlanta, Georgia, Lewisburg, Tennessee, and then we have San Diego, California. Awesome, guys. So obviously a little less comments than we have people watching. And then we have the replays that I see at least like 50 people watch the replays every single time. So what we do is we present these for the time that you can't watch this live. Okay. So like I mentioned, we're going to go over locations and dialing them specifically. So what I want to do is pop open this screen share. And then if you guys have questions along the way, I think this was a special request for somebody special was a special request last week. But if you guys do have questions along the way, just comment it so that at the end, instead of the Q&A, in case we run over, I can knock it out as we're chatting too. Okay. So let me pop this open. Share my screen. Oops. And there we go. Window, merchant, dialing basics. Perfect. So we're going to make this a little smaller for you guys, make this bigger, and this should be enough. Okay. So the one-liner that I always remember is you are always one dial away. Okay. And man, I say one location away, but it's the same thing if you guys have ever been in a sales role or anything similar, especially with like business, small business. If you're wearing all the hats of your business, you realize you're just one client away, one customer away, one dial away. You're just always getting closer and closer and closer. And the anxiety you feel is just normal. Whether you are running NVIDIA, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, who, you know, the founder even said himself, is like, man, I still have the stress of my business is going to go out of business in 30 days, right? And you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company. Right? So it's the exact same thing for a small business, a boring business, etc. So just so you know, you are okay. Right. So with that being said, what I want to go over is a few different things here. Okay. So one of the more common questions that I will see will be like, hey, how can I get a hold of the business owner remotely? And usually the case, like when we're bringing this up, comes down to number one, you're either hiring somebody or you're deciding, hey, I want to be a little more efficient with my time. You know, maybe you're not trying to count your steps with your Apple Watch. Instead, you're looking to actually optimize the hour you have available to get a hold of as many people as possible. Okay. So with this, this is a caveat. So this structure is similar, but it's not the same if you have somebody reaching out to you. So this is like, hey, we are generating a list of people and then we are contacting them to schedule a meeting. If they are coming from you from an ad, a referral, etc., there are going to be some minor tweaks, but the process is pretty similar. Okay. And then this would also apply if you have a lot of merchant leads and you decide, hey, I need to recontact them because I haven't spoken to merchant A, merchant B a month ago. Well, then what we want to do is what? Well, we want to dial them, either ourselves or one of our team members, and we usually going to have the same tracking. Okay. So the goal is actually pretty simple, guys. There's one of two, right? And we've gone over this a few times, but number one is going to be to schedule an appointment. This is what I like to start with, especially in the beginning. And then number two is going to be to sign up the merchant. Okay. The reason why I say schedule the appointment is going to be number one is because let's just be realistic. We want to focus within our skill set first. So in the beginning, typically your skill set to talk to business owners is not going to be as great. Okay. So knowing that, what do we want to do? We want to go towards the path of least resistance, which is going to be what? Just set up an appointment to talk to them in person, because the lack of visual cues, the lack of being in person, et cetera, sometimes it doesn't scare people. but it does create a different environment. And so what ends up happening is you may not be able to have them move forward because you don't listen to a tonality change, you don't listen to a pause, etc. And it may just seem a little more, I guess, complicated for you. So I always like to do a little old school, go in person. So if you're starting, we always start with scheduling an appointment. That's the goal of the actual call. And if you have, let's just say, for example, people are reaching out to you from advertising, they filled out website, your form on your website, etc. You may try to sign up. You might sign them up remotely, but typically what's going to happen is we're going to focus on signing them up in person. Okay. So these are one of the two goals. Okay. So now knowing that, there's a few different things that goes into the script. Okay. So when I mention a script, think of it like this. Okay. So there's a lot of back and forth regarding whether you should have a script, whether you should have frameworks, whether you should kind of like freeball it. Now, here's the way I look at it. Okay. I'm a very logical learner, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are also. And the reason I say that is because you kind of need to have an idea of what decent or good looks like, and then you can add in your flavor or your style. Because let's just be realistic, the way I converse, the way I articulate myself is going to be completely different than you. But you can use different fundamentals. You can use the same foundations to create what works for you. And as you have more repetitions, either through quantity or through time, then you're able to see what works better for you. But in the beginning, I like to start with the script. Okay. So let's talk about the script fundamentals. We are obviously dialing a business owner, whether it's the shop phone, etc. And we are trying to get to goal number one, which is scheduling the appointment. That's what we're going to focus on. Okay. So there's a few different things when it comes down to the script. There is going to be the intro, and this is usually to get past what we call a gatekeeper. That's usually the person that picks up the phone. Think of them as the front secretary, but you're trying to get to the doctor. And then from there, we're going to have some actual interest. We're going to have a clear offer, meaning we're going to make it very clear like what we actually are offering them. We're going to have some type of buy-in or a temp check, as we call it. I'll just put this. And then after we have that, let me pull this down a little bit for you guys. So buy-in, we're going to have a temperature check, and then we're going to have a proposal. Okay. And that's usually, we call this an offer, but really it's a proposal. Okay. So when we think about this, think about an actual phone call with somebody. What are we looking to do? So number one is we're looking to actually get a hold of them, because we look at what are the bare minimums, like this is a law enforcement term, but we need like the elements of what success looks like. So what are the elements? Well, we need the person that can actually work with them. We need them to actually have a time available or have an interest in this. They need to have an actual interest in doing this to give you a fighting chance for them to actually work with you. And then they have to be qualified, meaning that you're not just going to call a farmer's market person who literally has one tomato for sale. That doesn't make sense. So we need to get a lot of this done either before the call or during the call. So this is how it works. So as we start, there's a few different things, right? Now, the intro is actually probably one of the most important things. And it's kind of like, if you're a little more old school, what do people say? Hey, your handshake dictates how people judge you, how you walk in, etc. You can always salvage things, but your first perception drives a lot of the results. Okay. And this is not to make you overanalyze it, but we just need to understand that we do need to be confident and we need to be very direct in what we're doing. But the other thing is there has to be some type of interest for them to actually pick up the phone and stay on the phone. And here's the reason why. Although you are offering something very unique, you have to understand that there's a lot of calls that go to businesses. So the moment I had a LinkedIn profile, if I show you guys my email, it would crash most older phones. It's absolutely bonkers. Every single day, I probably get 20 to maybe 50 emails a day, new emails, people reaching out for things. So if you're person number 32, how do you stand out? I don't know that you're person number 32 and you actually have something I need. All I'm used to is like, man, I just get all these emails all day. So we want to kind of stand out from the crowd. So there's a few different things we do. So the first thing is going to be what we call a pattern interrupt. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, ultimately, it can't just be, hey, I'm looking to offer you this, because then it's womp, 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 womp. So what typically helps is we ask something that's a little different that causes them to stop and to get off autopilot. So think about it like this. a lot of people commute back and forth, whether it's to work, whether it's to pick up the kids, to your business, etc. And you probably take one of maybe the same two routes. And what ends up happening is you've taken that route so many times that if something new pops up on the side of the road, you don't even notice until somebody says, "Hey, there's a brand new like mansion right there." And it just, you don't pay attention to it because you created this pattern and you're just autopilot. So what ends up happening is that employee, that business owner, if they are picking up, or that front desk receptionist, whatever, they pick up and they have these frameworks in the head that they automatically go through, and they basically just filter out as much as possible ahead of time. So they're doing less decision making. So if you fall into that, what ends up happening is they just say, and they might just say something wrong, but usually they're just going to keep you from talking to the business owner. So the main goal with this is to get past this gatekeeper, as we call it, something that's keeping the gate, think of like a castle and a moat, and get to that actual bit decision maker, right? So how can we do that? So there's a few methods, right? So number one, you can say, I'm looking for the owner. Okay. And here's the reason why. Well, when somebody calls looking for the owner, that's usually a problem. So if you guys do have a business, you know that if somebody calls your employee and says, "Hey, I'm looking for the owner," it's like, "Oh, what happened?" Right? Did we forget an order? Did they get raw food? Did we mess up a roof? Like, we don't know what it is. So these are one of their options. Okay. So this is what we're going to stick to start. And the reason why is because it's probably going to be the easiest for you. Okay. So instead of giving you guys a lot of like confused hooks or different hooks that we use sometimes, like the call center, we're going to start with this really simple. So I'm just going to start when they pick up the phone, they're going to say something along the lines of like, "Hey, this is so and so business," or "Hey, this is something," or "Hey, can I help you?" Right. And right off the bat, we're just going to start with, "I'm looking for the owner." Right. And then from there, they're probably going to respond. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. There we go. So they're going to probably respond along the lines of, I'm going to make this a little better so you guys can see this. Go make this a little smaller. Cool. So this is going to be yourself. This is going to make it so much easier when you guys get these notes after. Right. All right. And we have the business. Go. Perfect. Right. So this is going to be some type of pickup. All right, here we go. So some type of pickup. And then from there, I'm looking for the owner, right? Very direct, seems very like not salutation appropriate, etc. But again, we are contacting them to do business with them. So sometimes we need to have a pattern interrupt. Okay. And then they're going to say, "Who is this?" Or some variation of, "Who is this? This is him," or "This is them." We'll do it gender neutral. Or it's going to be, "What do you need?" Or "You can speak to me," or something along the lines of, "I'm the manager," or "I'm the," and then we're going to put business relationship, because they're trying to clarify what is actually occurring. Okay. So this is not a problem, but ultimately they're trying to figure out like, hey, is there a complaint, et cetera? Because they're not just going to connect you with automatically. Right. And so what I would like to do, because now we're going to go into an interest phase, well, we're going to have something that's going to work for them to actually want to continue to stay on the line. Because again, the first 30 seconds is they have to determine whether they're going to hang up on you or not, because they got to see if you're qualified to even speak to them. So I like to ask a question. So I would ask more of a confused question regarding them accepting crypto payments. Okay. And you can say crypto payments, you can say digital payments, or something along the lines. And the reason why we're going to do this is because it's not the usual thing. They're not going to say, "Hey, are you looking to save money on your credit card fees?" Or, "Hey, we want to," you're not going to jam down something down their throat, because we ultimately want to get some buy in to make sure they show up with you. Okay. So, along the lines of, "I was wondering why," or I'm going to make this stronger terminology because we're going to cause some reaction. So, "I'm trying to understand why you guys do not accept digital payments." You can say digital payments or crypto payments. Okay. Now you're probably thinking like, well, wait a second, this is not going to be a full like question, et cetera, but this is going to stimulate a response. And I'm going to move this down for the sake of ease for you guys. Now, what is going to be a proposed response from this employee? Well, it's actually going to be pretty simple. Okay. So they might say something along the lines of, who is this? Or why do you ask? Or so when you say, who is this? Why do you ask? I'm not sure. You're going to need to speak to X, Y, and Z because the decision maker may not be the person you're actually talking to. Okay. And then from there, we need to have a clear offer. Okay. So we have the interest, they're continued. And so there's a few options we can go through because before we present it to them, we want to determine are they the person? Okay. So if they say something along the lines of, you need to speak to so and so, well, we need to get clarity as to how we get a hold of them. Okay. So that's the one exception. But typically it's going to be something along the lines of this, like, who is this? Why do you ask? I'm not sure. Or some type of clarity of like, hey, why are you asking? Are you a customer? And so I would actually continue the interest phase at this point. Here's what I mean by that. Well, somebody might get kind of concerned and say, oh, let me tell them what I'm doing as soon as possible. But we want to delay the ask and clarity as long as possible. And here's the reason why. Ultimately, we are trying to get to the person that makes a decision without having to go in person. So if you have to spend an extra 20 seconds of like some discomfort, or your employee has to spend an extra 20 seconds of discomfort to do that, you're like, counts down. It's not a problem, right? Let's do that. So objectively, from a third person perspective, it's very rational. But when you're talking to them, sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable because there's tension. And we naturally are not bred to have tension. We evolved from what? Hunter gatherers. We would avoid saber-toothed tigers. So we want to have, tribe dynamics. We want to make sure we're agreeable with everybody. So if you understand that you're going to feel a little uncomfortable at this point, then you're going to do very well. And the rule of thumb is this: if you don't feel awkward when you're talking to your first 10 to 15 people, that means you're not doing well. And I'm sure any person that's been in sales or any person that's been in a confrontational role like law enforcement or things like that, this is the same thing I'd say to my newer officers to say, hey, if you don't feel like there's a tennis ball in your stomach that's going up to your esophagus, that means you're not developing. Okay. So now that we have them actually trying to figure out what's going on, we're going to continue the interest phase because they did not clearly say this. Okay. Have no sound. You may need to refresh, Tina. You may need to refresh because I didn't see any other comments. So I know my sound should still be good. It says it's good right here. Okay. So you're going to need to speak to X, Y, and Z. We're going to avoid that because that's just going to be clarity on how do we get a hold of them? Who is that person, et cetera. So what we need to understand is who and how. So at this point, we want to continue the interest. So there's a few different ways we can do this, but what's going to be the simplest is, well, I was wondering because a friend of mine, or you can say yourself, myself, I'm going to put this in brackets for you guys using this as a cheat sheet. I was wondering because a friend of mine, um, friends of mine, myself, were interested, but noticed your business does not accept it. Okay. So you're probably wondering, like, well, won't that feel like lying, et cetera? Like, no, it's not, because aren't you interested in accepting crypto payments at their business? Yes, you are. Well, wouldn't you use it once you place your device to do a test transaction, to show it off, et cetera? Use them as social proof for other businesses? Absolutely. Isn't it in their best interest to do it? So that way, what? They have an additional payment method, free marketing. They become ahead of the curve with all their other businesses. And as it starts becoming more mainstream, they become some of the first ones to do it. Yes. So everything is in their interest. Okay. So as long as you understand that, no issues whatsoever. Now, with that being said, I was wondering because a friend of mine, myself, etc., were interested, but we were looking for this. So I put this in brackets so you guys understand this is interchangeable with what you want. Okay. Now they're going to say, again, something similar to what happened above. They're going to have some variation of this. But because you've asked or you created more interest, more than likely we're going to get more closer to something. So this is going to be some type of filler response. And what I mean by that is they're going to say something like, oh, or okay, or because they don't know how to process this. Essentially, you're the same person calling a pizza restaurant and saying, hey, I want to order 100 pizzas. Well, that probably doesn't happen on a weekly basis. And they're thinking, wait, FIFA is not till next week. What the heck? We're not ready for this. So there's that pause. And this is where you get to take control of the conversation. So this is where we're going to clarify who, because before we get into our clear offer, we want to clarify who. And for absolute clarity, because I want to make this as simple as possible so you can do this on your own later, we want to understand who is the decision maker. Okay, this is really important because if we're talking to the wrong person, yes, they can meet with you. But what ends up happening is it turns into a follow up later anyway. And we end up doing twice as much work on the back end versus doing a little more uncomfortable work on the front. And again, if you're uncomfortable with this, you can do proof of concept because obviously you're a leader in your business. You can set the tone, create the script, etc., and you can hire people to do this for you. But you need to know what good looks like before you hire people, maintain them, train them, or end up replacing them. So we want to determine who the actual decision maker is. So typically, we're going to ask an open-ended question. And here's the reason why. If you ever ask a multiple choice or a binary yes/no question, people are going to lean towards just giving you a BS answer. That's just the name of the game. It is what it is. So what we always want to lean towards is open-ended questions because we want them to fill the gap with what it is that's more likely a truthful answer. Because if we ask them, hey, you're the business owner, right? Or you're the decision maker, right? What ends up happening is more than likely they're just going to say yes because it's the path of least resistance. Because naturally, like I said, most people aren't used to confrontation. They're looking to avoid it to essentially get off the phone, fights, etc. So we want to ask an open-ended question to get their full buy-in to actually respond. So depending on the response, we can gauge like, oh, that's truthful or awesome. They're going to give me something more than just yes or no. So in this case, once I give you this filler response, who is the person I can speak to about this? So some variation of this, all right? And when it comes down to it, they're going to give you some variations like this. So give me 1 second, give you some more rows. They're going to say myself, or they're going to say a specific name, or they're going to say a title. Okay. So if they say themselves, what we need to do is confirm they're the person that can make a decision on this. Okay. Or if they say a specific person, like their name or a title, we need to clarify what's. Well, we need to clarify how do we get a hold of them, who they are. So if they say a title, you need to speak to the manager, you need to speak to the director, you need to speak to the shift lead, whatever. We need to clarify who they are. Okay. And then we want to clarify how they make a decision. It's like, okay, and who's that person? Oh, it's Jessica. Jessica who? Jessica Smith. Okay, how do I get a hold of them? Well, this is their phone number, best case scenario. This is their email, or they're here every morning. So now you know, you're going to put a note as to what I need to call back, or my employee needs a call back during the morning because this is not going to be fruitful. I might get information from this person on the phone with me, but it's not going to be a fruitful conversation that actually leads to them signing up with me. So these are the thought processes that we need to have in our head. And I'm going to give you guys a hint. You can use this exact same training to provide to a team member. You just consolidate it, use the transcript, and just cut out the parts of like, you being the business owner. And you can use this exact same training to provide to your employee to learn how to dial business owners. So now we have the title. So we're going to determine who and how. They say a specific name. So we know who they are, but we do need to know who they are in relation to the business. So if they say, you got to talk to Christina. Well, who the heck is Christina? So we say, well, who is that? Oh, she's X, Y, and Z. So it's going to lead to the title. So you see, it's vice versa. Now we need to determine what, how do we get a hold of them? When? We ask, the 5 interrogative questions. And then if they say it's themselves, we need to clarify what? Well, can you make a decision on behalf of the business? So for the sake of simplicity, we're going to assume you're talking to the business owner or the main manager, et cetera, who could just sign up right then and there. So they say it's yourself. Okay. So now, since we have gone to what? We've had the intro to get past the gatekeeper. We had a pattern interrupt to keep them on the phone. We kept the interest going for the phone. So that way they want to stay on the call because now they're committed. They can't say they have customers in line. It's like, well, if you had customers in line, why'd you spend a minute talking to me? That doesn't make sense. So again, we're getting more buy-in. We've determined who is the decision maker. Now we need to have a clear offer. Okay. So to be clear on this, it has to be in their interest. Okay. It has to be what we call irresistible. Irresistible. And I'll let spell check help me out on that. So it needs to be irresistible. Oh, that is correct. And then we want to have clarity. So we want to have clarity on their qualification. And then we want to have some urgency or, again, in their interest. So this kind of goes into that, right? So we need to have some urgency for them to actually do it right now. So let's go into the next question for that. So I'm going to pop this open for you guys. So now we're at the phase where they determine it's me. This is where we're going to continue. Okay. And I'm going to bold this just so you guys know in response right here. This is how these are continuing like in flow. So now myself. Okay. So we're going to do something and it's going to be really simple. Okay. We want to clearly define what we're offering and how it benefits them. I put the notes right over here. Okay. What we're offering them and how it benefits them. So let's just say it's them. Awesome. Like I said, so we're going to introduce ourselves. Name is name with X, Y, and Z. We're going to put your company. And then we're going to have some urgency, which is going to be the people around them also. So we have this, and just first to make it really simple for you guys, I'm going to make this, it's really spaced out, so you can just copy this later. So my name is so-and-so, introduce yourself. Speaking to local businesses, I just signed up. I'm going to make this really simple for you guys. So I just started, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, started working with a few local businesses that are now accepting digital payments. Since this program just came out or just became available, I'm going to make this very not sales proof. Okay, so I'm going to make this as simple as possible for you guys, so that way there's not too many follow-up questions from this business owner, decision maker, etc. So my name's Gedem with Dividend Shift. I just started working with a few local businesses that are now accepting digital payments since this program just became available. I'm going to highlight this because we need to have some tonality shift. Okay, and then from there, have you heard of this option before? Okay. And the reason why we're going to ask a question is because if you just vomit, for lack of better words, information, they won't retain anything. So we want to have clarity. Now, this right here is probably one of the most important sentences you're going to say. So I'm going to highlight this because this needs to change. All this can stay the same. Calling hundreds and hundreds of business, this is going to constantly get refined. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, there's different variables. Okay. So just for the sake of making it easier for you guys, I'm going to insert a column to the left. Now, why do I say this? Well, number one, we can use, so I'm going to change this. We can change specific business type. Okay. So when you say business type, hey, I'm working with local jewelers. We just worked with 15 roofing companies. We can increase quantity of social proof. So what's that mean? Well, like I said, I just worked with 100 different businesses, etc. We can increase the urgency for them to do it. Increase value of the offer, meaning like what you're offering. Hey, I'm giving 100 free devices to you. Well, it's obviously extreme, but you got to understand what I mean by that. So this is going to have a lot of variations in what we say. So we always test and manipulate this sentence. Okay. And so if something's not working, for example, or something just doesn't work for you, guess what? You can change it, but this is always going to be the main focus. Okay. Because if this is not dialed in, no pun intended, what ends up happening is there's just no interest. So we want to ensure that we do that. Okay. Now we're going to continue on. So I just started working with a few local businesses and Oops. Have you heard of this program option before? Okay. So what do you think they're going to say once you say that? It's going to be no. Okay. So no, and it's going to be some variation of no. Okay. And that's when we're going to continue. So basically, they are inviting you to continue to explain what it is you're offering. Because again, if you start blabbing a lot of information to them, they're just going to tune out. And if they tune out, then you are at a disadvantage and you're going to think, man, what the heck, it didn't work out. Well, no, it's not. It's just because nobody wants to hear anybody else talk. Like, we're selfish in general. Like, humans are selfish in general. I want to give you guys a rude awakening. So once you understand that, you use that to your benefit with marketing, sales, et cetera, operations, you start realizing how you can do this. So they give you some variation of no. And we're going to continue knowing that, hey, it needs to be in their interest. It needs to be irresistible, quote unquote. And there needs to be clarity on what it is. Okay. So we started with, I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys. We started with, hey, awesome. My name is I'm with Dividend Shift. I just started working with a few local businesses that are now accepting digital payments since this program just became available. Have you heard of this option before? No, variation. Okay. So there's two options here, right? You can explain or ask them. So ask them for an invitation to explain. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, we can continue or we say, hey, well, would you like me to explain how this works? So now there's more buy-in. I would lean towards more buy-in. I don't know about you guys, but I just am not a fan of, like the used car salesman. That's like the negative stereotype. What is that? Well, it's like, hey, they put a little black spray paint on the bumper and they say, hey, you need to buy right now. It's 50% off. And it's like, well, my wife's not here or my husband's not here. It's like, you don't need them. It's like, well, hey, ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, we want to make sure the decision maker has an objective decision, because more than likely, if they went to that dealership lot, they really haven't done the research. They're just looking for a car. So we want to make them have an informed decision, but we want them to actually have buy-in to make the decision also. So I like to lean towards the latter, which is asking them for an invitation to explain. So if we're going to use that, I'm going to bold this for you guys. Would you like me to break down how it works? And you can add in for the urgency, you can say to see if you qualify for, but we don't need to add that. So now that we've actually added this in below, I'm going to speed this up for the sake of time. They say, sure. Okay. It's going to be very rare that they say no. And if they say no, they weren't going to make it to a meeting anyway. It is what it is. You can call them later, follow up with them, but I've just saved you some time because we're getting straight to the point. So once they continue saying, sure, we want to focus on a few things. Okay. So the focus is going to be, number one, simplicity. Number two, their benefit. Number three, let's pop this right here. And then you guys will also have a copy of this after the live training. So if you struggle to take notes, there is no problem whatsoever. Okay. So we need to focus on simplicity, benefits, the opportunity. So we want to focus on them being first. And then we want to make it very clear that there's no additional work. What do I mean by that? Well, if you call somebody and say, hey, I'm going to give you this system, and now you have to actually do 5 times as much work, there's no way they're going to work with you, because ultimately it doesn't matter how much money you offer them. Unless it's enough to pay for an employee, it doesn't make sense. Because when it comes down to it, it's like, well, why would I trade the same thing I have to cause myself more work? So we want to focus on these things. Okay. So they've invited you to explain. So we also say, hey, would you like me to explain? Cool. So it's pretty simple. I don't know if you've heard, we can, add in some pre-frames to whatever you say, but I'm going to make this really simple for you to follow. So it's pretty simple. You're now allowed to accept cryptocurrencies for payments. Right? Now, what's the number one thing that's going to happen? I don't want to accept crypto. I'm scared. I heard Bitcoin went to 0. I heard Iran this or Iran that. It's like all these different things that come to their head. That's why we don't start with cryptocurrency. So we want to make it very clear and actually handle all the concerns before they even pop up. So they can say, oh, I was going to ask this, but you already explained this. So it's going to be something along the lines of customer comes in and will pay you in crypto. This by scanning the device just like Apple Pay. Why do we do that? Well, how does it work? Is it complicated, etc.? Everybody knows Apple Pay now. Even if you're 99 years old, you have an idea that it's not Orange Pay or Banana Pay. It's like an actual device. Okay. So a customer comes in and will pay you in crypto by scanning the device, just like Apple Pay. Okay. You will immediately accept the cash equivalents. We handle everything behind the scenes because we're not going to introduce questions that aren't asked. We handle everything behind the scenes. So all you see is the payments coming through like normal. Okay. So at this point, we've probably spoken for about 15 seconds. So I'm going to recap this. It's pretty simple. You're now allowed to accept cryptocurrencies for payments. Okay. We've covered the simplicity aspect, right? Now, a customer is going to come in, pay you in crypto by scanning the device, just like Apple Pay. Again, simplicity. You will immediately accept the cash equivalent. What are we covering? No additional work. What if crypto, etc.? So we're covering number 4 and number 1. We handle everything behind the scenes. So all you see is the payment come through like normal. Awesome. And the main benefits is you will attract new customers, can increase the amount they spend, and get listed online as a new business. Again, you can make this as much, like you can shorten this. You can do this in Spanish, Vietnam, whatever, or Vietnamese. So online as a new business, you get listed online as a new business that accepts digital payments. Oh, so we've covered everything. We've covered the benefit, which is at the end, because that's the last thing they remember. We covered the simplicity. We covered them being first, so new business, and then no additional work. Okay. So then the next thing is, well, I wonder what the next thing they're going to say. They're going to say some variation of like, okay, right? Which might feel a little awkward because like, I don't know where to go from here. This sounds interesting. I'm not interested. Just be prepared for that because you may find somebody that says, nope, absolutely not. We accept cash since 1999. We're never changing. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have talked to them about credit cards and they might be a little more stiff. So I'm not interested, or can you tell me more? Or they're going to ask a decision-making question. Okay, I'm going to separate this out to be very clear. So they're going to ask a decision-making question. Well, what does that mean? Okay. So what this is a question that sometimes gets disguised as an attitude. Sometimes it gets disguised as a concern or a reason why they're not interested, but it's not. They might ask like a direct question. It's like, well, are you going to pay for the device? Or, well, if it's so cool, why isn't everyone doing it, et cetera? These are what we call decision-making questions. What that means is they're saying, hey, if you help me rationalize this question, I'm probably going to sign up with you and start working with you. And the moment you take a step back, those 4 words, just so you know, have saved lives in the history of the law enforcement, right? Take a step back. We're going to relax. We're not going to take anything emotional because sometimes they say things that, aren't the most appropriate, but it's okay. So we're going to take a step back and we're going to understand that, hey, this person potentially wants to work with me, which means when they're talking, you should be hearing the cha-ching, the cha-ching, cha-ching, like the old registers. Okay. So if they ask anything other than I'm not interested, well, what that means is this is a viable person to work with you. They may not work with you this second or this day, but you need a mark on your CRM, which we're going to talk about in a second, that, hey, this person, we need to check in with them, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's a week from now, a month from now, because right now they may be busy, they may be annoyed, they may not have had their coffee, who knows, okay? Their family member could have died, anything could happen. But they've said that, you know what? This might be something I want to work with. So we want to make sure they are like red hot priorities, okay? So how are we going to handle this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the decision-making question because this is where you're going to get your most bang for your buck, okay? Because it's so new, you're going to have more of these. And then obviously you're going to have you're not going to get past some gatekeepers. That's some of the issues you run into, which is, hey, the receptionist keeps picking up or they won't give you the information. No problem. But when you get to this, we want to make sure like we're in the paint, right? We're about to dunk with Kobe and Shaq. So they ask some type of decision-making question. Okay. So this is where we're going to go into our next section. So we go into our clear offer. Okay. We are done. Now we need to get into our action phase. So remember what I mentioned before is we have to decide what we're doing first. So we're deciding to schedule an appointment, either virtually, like a video call, etc., when they're more available, or we're deciding to sign them up. I would highly suggest you start with scheduling an appointment first. Okay. And the reason why is it gives you breathing room, it gets out the jitters out. And guess what? You have more time to think. And we always want to get time to think before we are able to execute pretty well. If you're advanced, you have sales skills, et cetera, like a lot of you guys do, hey, try to attempt to get way more buy-in, get basic info to pre-qualify them to actually sign them up. Say, hey, I can show you the dashboard. I can send you the dashboard ahead of time so you can sign up, and I can talk to you in person. So now you're 80, 90% of the way there. But if you're newer to this or you have a newer employee, we always want to start with this. This is what we call a conversion, which is scheduling the actual appointment. Okay. So for the sake of this, we're going to focus on the actual appointment. Now, they ask some type of decision-making question. They say, well, does it integrate with my system? What's the payout like? What do you guys charge, et cetera? These are all good questions. We think of it as like, oh, they're being, obtuse or being very direct. No, in business, you want things like this. These are guys that make decisions. So we want to get what we call a temperature check. And for simplicity, I'm going to put this in, grab this. I'm going to put it here so you guys can refer to this after. And we're going to put it without formatting. This is the buy-in or temperature check. Okay. So what we're going to do when they answer it is we're going to give them a simple answer. And you want to think of this as like smoke. So what do I mean by that? Well, you want to be able to see it, but not touch it, right? It's like right in front of you, smoke. You're barbecuing, there's a smoke coming up. You're like, man, I can see it, but you can run through it. So you want to give them just enough of an answer where they're satisfied, but it leaves them wanting more. So it opens up the conversation for a further conversation. Okay. Again, we're focusing on the appointment, not signing them up right now. Okay. As you go into signing them up, then we go a little different. But for the sake of this, for volume, we want to focus on appointments. So we have a simple answer. We answer them. You don't just, get away from it, because you guys have seen that before where nobody gives you an answer and just frustrates you. They're not going to want to work with you. So give them just enough of an answer. And then from there, so we say outside of X, Y, and Z, which is going to be the buying question, is this something you would potentially see yourself doing with the right information? Okay. This is going to be a very direct question. This is number one. Okay. Option number two is if you don't want to be this direct, which is okay. So I'm going to make this a little simpler. Direct version, less direct version. Okay. This is for your benefit. You guys can use any of these. Option number two is outside of X, Y, and Z, we're going to do the exact same thing. Is this something you'd want more information on? Okay. So this is more info. This is more intent. Okay. And just to be clear, this is more info and this is going to be more intense. So the person you ask this, you're going to have a higher likelihood of signing up. Okay. The person you ask this, you're going to have more volume, meaning that if we speak to 100 people, okay, and let's just say 50 of them, you ask this question, 50 of them, you ask this question, you're going to get less people that respond to this positively. Okay. So you're going to have less appointments. You're going to have more that respond to this. However, I'm very confident to say the conversions, like the actual outcome, is going to be very similar. The only difference is these people more than likely aren't going to show up. They're going to push back the decision. They're not going to bring people that are involved, or it's going to cause you a little more work. So you have two options here. This is business strategy. Like what I'm telling you right here is the same thing if you have a business that's doing $7 a year, it's doing $700,000 a year, or 7 figures a year. This right here is an executive decision. You decide, do I want to have more of a fishing pole or a spear gun? Or do I want to have a net that captures a lot, but I have to filter on the back end? I give you the hints. It doesn't matter. You'll be successful with either way, but you just figure out what you like best. Okay. So if you want simplicity, we're going to have this version. If you want to get more straight to the point, especially if you have more sales skills or you have somebody working with you with a lot of sales skills, we're going to ask an intentional question to save everybody some time. Okay. So we're going to have some variation of this. Okay. Now, with that being said, guys, we're going to do this. All right. So we have the simple answer outside of this question. Now we're going to stick to this one right here for the sake of their response. And they're going to say yes, no, maybe. Okay. Or some variation of no. Okay. Now we need to identify these. So if it's going to be any variation of no, then we need to ask why, which is like the most important question. So any variation of no, and I say variation because no comes in various forms. If you have kids, they say, hey, can I have ice cream tonight? You're like, hey, maybe tomorrow. That means no, you're not going to have ice cream any of these nights, right? So they may not be direct about it, but we need to recognize that it is a variation of no. So we need to ask why, okay? So we get clarity. So it's not just, oh, they're not interested. Like, no, they just may have a concern or question that we need to answer. But we're going to focus on yes. They say yes or maybe, which is a variation of yes. Okay. So maybe equals need clarity. Yes equals obviously need less clarity. No equals concern. Variation of no equals, whoops, let me get this here. So we have maybe equals they need clarity. Yes, they need less clarity, which is a green signal to sign up or to meet with them. No equals a concern or bad experience. This is usually the case. Just so you know, if they say no, no one's going to rationally say no to you saying, I'm going to bring in additional customers, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's usually some type of bad experience. Oh, I talked to an insurance guy and they told me I'm going to have life insurance just like you, and they sounded just like you, or things like that. So there's usually some type of bad experience. And a variation of no, need clarity, clarify why, which can lead to a maybe. Okay. So for clarity, guys, we're going to have this little work through right here. If they have a variation of no, that means we need to get clarity to determine if we can move them to a maybe. If they have a maybe, that means they need more clarity to get to a yes. And if it's yes, we don't assume, we don't sit down and say, awesome, I did a great job. No, we want to be very rational, emotionless, and say, okay, cool. I just need to give them clarity, be professional, and they're going to sign up with me and I can celebrate later. Okay. So we're going to focus on the yes or the maybe. So we could say something along the lines of awesome. And then what we want to do, and this is going to be my speaking style, so you don't have to add this in, but we want to have some type of acknowledgement right over here. So use whatever you use in whatever language you want to use also. And then from there, once we have that, we want to have some type of urgency. So you remember what I mentioned up here is going to be, we're going to have a proposal, but there always needs to be urgency. Because if there's no urgency, we end up filling what's available to us. So for example, we have a coaching call, we have an hour available. Guess what? We're about 52 minutes in because we use the space available to us. That's just the way we operate as humans. So if we allow them to allow the space, guess what? They have 365 days in a year, 366 on a leap year, you're going to run into issues. So we need to set timelines. So what we're going to do is we're going to acknowledge, and then we're going to have some urgency plus clear timeline. This is the things we're going to do. Okay. So I'm going to insert a row right over here. Move this right here for your guys' benefits. So we're going to say, this is going to be the example for you guys. Awesome. So I may be available in the area later this week. What times of day are best to meet in person? Okay. So then you're probably wondering, like, well, wait a second. What about the day? Well, no, let's confirm times of day first. So we're going to have this. And then we're going to go into days of the week. Okay. So they're going to say mornings, afternoons, evening, or there's going to be not available for X, Y, and Z timeline. Okay. Don't worry about any of these. Ultimately, we can handle all of them. We're at a logistical phase right now. Okay. So what we need to do is recognize we're at the logistical parts, meaning we need to get to scheduling. So let's just say they say mornings, afternoons, or evenings. Awesome. So what works better? And then this obviously depends on your availability, but what works better? Tomorrow or, and then the following, I'm gonna have to be this clear because this needs to be a variable for any day you guys do this, following day. Okay. And here's the reason why. As much as you're offering them something great, people just forget. I talked to a lot of prospective clients, etc., kids in diapers, hundreds of employees. You just forget, and that's just the way it is. We're at an age right now. You have to understand this: that you are bombarded, you are being contaminated with information. The fact that you're even paying attention to me puts you in like the top 1%. I'm thinking, what? Like, yes, people cannot pay attention, especially if you're growing up nowadays. Like, think about all the information available to you versus like somebody throwing a newspaper on a bicycle. And that's where you get your information from. So this little device is contaminating you with information. And why do I say this? Not because I don't like iPhones or mobile phones. It's because you have to understand the perspective of the business owner. They're going to forget. It's nothing personal. It's not that, I have something against you. It's like, no, they just forgot. It's just not serious because things pop up. Now they have a text message. Their employee's calling in sick. Now their employee wants to change shifts. Now one of the inventory is delayed. Oh, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Now the new supplier we went to is actually double the price of the original one that we had to change from. Like, think about all these variables that are happening. And now some random person called them saying, hey, do you want to add this new thing? Well, you can see how all of a sudden it's not that big of a priority. It's nothing personal. We just have to understand that. So we need to make it as simple as possible for them. So we want to clarify today. I mean, ideally, you go there today. Like I'm speed is king, guys. Speed, success favors speed. I'll put it that way. But if you're not available during the day, which is totally fine, we want to go the next day. If you're not available the next day, we want to go the next day in the evening. If you're not available the next day in the evening, the preceding or following day. Because best case scenario, you'd have went yesterday, but you didn't even know who they were. So we want to go there as fast as possible so they don't forget, they don't lose interest. All of a sudden somebody else calls them regarding like something else. And they're like, oh man, this is going to cause issues with this new thing this guy's going to come to. And we just create what we call unknown deal killers. So we want to stick to the next day or tomorrow, whichever day it is. If it's Saturday, go on Sunday. It is what it is, because when they sign up and they're processing with you, you'll buy back that coffee date you're supposed to have with somebody. So they're going to either tell you tomorrow, the following day, those times don't work, or an alternative time. Okay. If it's going to be those times don't work, we need to clarify what days of the week work best. If they give an alternative time, you need to confirm, number one, you're available, because let's be realistic. You have stuff going on. You got work, you got business, you have family, whatever. Okay. If they say one of these, we continue with that. But here's what we do. Okay. So we confirm. So just confirming you'll be 100% available, and then dates, time. And so I just skipped a step. I just realized, because there's a different script we'll use if you're dialing more, or we're going to move this down here. You'll see why. Cool. So what I have available is X, Y, and Z time. Does that work for you? Okay. Or you can do times. And they're going to say yes, no, or alternative time. And then we just determine, we say. So I'm going to make this as simple as possible, you guys. I want to make this really easy for you. So you're going to confirm, okay, so that should work. And they're going to say some variation of like some confirmation message. They're going to give you some type of acknowledgement. It's just going to be, okay, cool, or whatever, or it's going to be just awkward silence. Either way, this is coming from them. This is interchangeable with their person type. And then from there, we're going to confirm. Awesome. And then what we want to do is get some information. So they're going to say yes, or they're going to say no. If they say no, well, then we have a problem. We need to confirm. Okay. So we're going to go to, I'm bolding these so you guys know what we are following, what this script follows. Now they say yes. Okay. So, and just so I can X, Y, and Z benefit, this changes. What is, and then we want to get identifying information. Because number one, if they don't provide this, they're just not that interested. Right? So what was your last name? What's your email? So we're going to do this in priority. What's your mobile number? And we're going to get that. Awesome. Once they do that, what's your email address? And then we can say, I forgot to ask, but what's your last name? And again, we've confirmed that they are the decision maker. So this is assuming you've 100% confirmed they are the decision maker. Now we're just going to ask identifying questions. Okay. And so just so I can, what? So the X, Y, and Z benefit, like I mentioned, has to be something rational. So I can just confirm you qualify. So I can pass this to my team or et cetera. There has to be some rational reason why you're getting this information from them. Because let's be realistic, you're a random person calling them. So if you're a random person calling them, what's that mean? Well, what it means is what? They're like, I'm not too comfortable. And we can create more doubt than necessary. So we want to make sure that what? We're asking them something that's appropriate. So we get all their information and then we're going to go off the best case scenario. So we're going to do an insert row below. They are going to provide the information, and we're going to say the most important sentence after the pitch, obviously, for this call. Okay. I cannot emphasize how important this is, guys. This ending to your call can make or break whether they work with you. Here's the reason why. Just like how you've been watching this for the course of 45 minutes, let's be realistic. You probably forgot what I said 25 minutes ago. Just be honest. Okay. They forgot half the stuff we talked about. Somebody walked in, their buzzer went off, the refrigeration temperature went down, somebody called in, things are happening, guys. Information overload. So we need to understand that. We need to recap. Okay. So importance, we need to recap. So this is what the recap looks like. I'm going to highlight this red. This is how important this is. This is probably like the most undervalued part of this right here. Okay. So awesome. First name. So just to recap, we're going to meet at X, Y, and Z time on specific date. I'm making this so specific, guys. Like this is, you should feel like a police officer doing a investigation the way we talk about this, because it's all the same, guys. So we're going to meet at X, Y, and Z time on specific date. I'm going to break down how this works in detail for your business. I'll also, and then we'll do X, Y, and Z benefit. This is interchangeable. You guys get really creative on this. That X, Y, and Z benefit. In the meantime, this is the reason why they're going to actually confirm. So what's the X, Y, and Z benefit, like I mentioned? I'm going to research to make sure that your business even qualifies. I'm going to see if we still have a device in stock. I'm going to talk to my team to see if they can add you to prioritization for installs. There needs to be a benefit for them to actually show up. Once this happens, essentially, you have just scheduled a meeting, right? And if you got anything out of what we just covered today, this is the most important line, because we're recapping all the hard work you did for the course of 3 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And you don't want it to go crumbling down at the end. Okay. So we're going to power through this, guys, just so I don't want to cut it off. Now we're talking about team structure. So this is pretty simple, right? When we're starting, scaling, building, scaling. Okay. So when we're starting, we just hire a dialer. That's it. Okay. We just hire a dialer. They are typically going to be a foreigner. So what we call a VA. we're typically going to do something along the lines of it's going to be South Africa. We can do Latin America, might be a little tough for people. It's a whole different culture. So we do South Africa. Eastern Europe is known. Sometimes we're going to do Southeast Asia, and this is in order of typically what people want for like call centers, just so you know. So South Africa, Southeast Asia, this usually includes like the Philippines. Okay, and then we have Latin America. We'll do this. South Africa, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and then we typically go to Africa in general. And these are typically going to be like the order of like what people want for call centers, because you look at accents, you look at culture, different things like that. Okay. So I say South Africa specifically, it's a hotspot because they naturally speak English. Like they speak Africans in English. There's actually somebody, I know there's a client from South Africa here, but this is like high demand. And then the pay is actually very reasonable. So you can afford the pay. It'll be maybe sometimes a little more, things Krugerlands, a little more than like the Philippines, but there's that. And we have Eastern Europe also because English is one of those languages. So you look at, there's, I know friends that have call centers in like Belarus, the Balkans, like, Kosovo, Albania, Macedonia, not as much Macedonia, in some of these areas. And then also, you have to all understand, like, you work with a company that's maybe in Belarus. Well, you might have sanctions because, the war going on, but we understand that. Ukraine was a pretty good one too before the war. You actually maybe have some tax benefits by working with a company in Ukraine. Who knows? But we start looking at the Eastern European area in general. Southeast Asia, what you remember here is going to be the Philippines. Sometimes Thailand, Indonesia, not so much because it's become a little more wealthy. And then we also have typically the Middle East, because a lot of times they will speak very good English. So you're going to have places like, I'm giving you guys like this big cheat sheet of outsourced work. We have Lebanon. We have not Dubai, unfortunately. You're not going to pay enough for the people in Dubai. So we have Lebanon. We have Egypt is one of them, not Qatar, Lebanon, Egypt, and I think Amar. These are the two main ones right now that you're going to have most of your cheaper talent from that speak decent English. Then we have Africa in general. Usually for Africa, what's going to end up happening is it's actually usually East Africa. And I'm being biased because, our parents are from East Africa, but surprisingly, you're going to get like doctors and like lawyers for like really cheap to call for you. So guess what happens? They learn English in medical school, or they use some type of foreign exchange program, and that's what ends up happening. And then Latin America, you're going to be looking at Ecuador. We have Colombia. Then we have Mexico is going to be a little more expensive for you, work staff compared to a lot of these places. And then Ecuador, not Peru as much, but these are probably the three main ones you're going to look at for Latin America or South America. This is going to be for outsourcing. Okay. And then you have the US also. You can always hire local people. You're just going to pay a little more. But again, we're talking about dialing, not talking in person. So the whole relationship is going to be, there is going to be you in person, and then we have a dialer outsourced. That's usually the starting phase. Okay. That's going to be the cheapest. Then when we're building, then what do we have? We have proof of concept. So once you have proof of concept, and we have about 5 more minutes, guys. I know I'm running behind. So building, we're going to have proof of concepts. So then we might either increase quantity or increase quality. Okay. Sometimes they become the same. So increase quantity of the people. So the same area, same region, or it's going to be one of these two options. Okay. So same region, more pay, which usually equals better, higher quality, or different region, North America. Okay. These are typically what it's going to be. Okay. And then increase quantity. And then we typically are going to outsource the in-person aspect at this point because we're now building. Okay. And then as we're scaling, we typically have some type of management system because now we want to systematize. Okay. Systematize and optimize. And I'm going to bold these to make it really easier for you guys. So we have some type of management, scaling, systematize, and optimize. So management, we have a recruiting, So we have, so systemize and optimize. So we have management. We typically have the recruiting functions and then the review functions taken care of. So you're usually out of the picture, or you decide, hey, this is the main focus of your business. You want to do this also. But again, this applies to any business. If you have any type of like social media marketing agency, I literally am just going through exactly how you scale it remotely, because I've run 100% remote teams for the past 5 years until the last like 2 years where it's been in person. But this is typically what's going to happen. So we're going to outsource management and recruiting, because recruiting, training, and replacing. Okay. So this is like, obviously continual training and then replacing people also, which means, firing people at the end of the day. So we have this. Okay. Now let's talk about software, right? So when we say software, typically it's going to start like this, right? So when we're starting and then we're scaling, there's two different phases. Okay. When we're starting, it's going to be your personal phone or free or low tier CRM. And that's basically going to be it, or a VoIP phone, right? We're just going to do this to cut costs. Okay. So when we're starting off, etc. So this may mean I get this assigned, because usually we need a secondary phone that's assigned to this person we're outsourcing. Or if you're just simple and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to dial, I'm going to get a hold of, 100 people myself. Then what I'm going to do is do this right here. Okay. And then when we're scaling, we're going to have usually a more robust CRM. We're going to have dialing software. So like dedicated software. And then there's a few different things, but we're not going to get big enough for this yet, because usually there's certain CRMs, et cetera, we can use. So typically what ends up happening is we start with this, and this is good enough to actually get you your first like 50 locations. And the reason why is because as long as you have somebody doing it dedicated and you have a system and the time we do it, well, then guess what happens? Well, now we just need a way to call them, and that's it. Okay. So then we're scaling, same thing. We're just going to optimize. We're going to usually optimize the things we're doing. So we have dedicated dialing software. We might have rotating local lines, like the area code that pulls up when they pick up shows as theirs, etc. So there's a few different things you can do. And then we go from there. Okay. And then we go into tracking. So these are the metrics we're going to use to track. These are called key performance indicators. Okay. KPIs. So number one is going to be dials, and then it's going to be pickups. We're going to have meaningful conversations. We're going to have the offers. We're going to have, and then we're going to have either sign up or scheduled. So this is going to be the conversion that we're tracking. These are going to be the basic ones for the dialer. Okay. So oops, this is what we use to track the dialer themselves. Okay. So then we go into the in-person stats, because we want to know in person. So the in-person stats, this could be yourself or this could be a different person. I would recommend still tracking it yourself. The reason why is because if you've already systematized this, go all in. Don't half-ass it, go all in. So we're going to do scheduled, showed, offered, closed. Okay. So what's this mean? So to be really simple, the way this looks like is we say, hey, I've dialed 100 people. So usually that means 100 different businesses. Okay. Unique, because this is one of the things that dialers do sometimes. I've managed a lot of teams and they'll say, I dialed 500 people. Like, oh, awesome. It's like, no, I dialed the same 200 people like multiple times in a row. It's like, well, wait a second. So we need to be clear on definitions. Okay. So we're going to say unique. Then we have pickups. So out of the 200 people I dialed, well, 100 people picked up. Okay. Or 20% picked up, whatever. If you're calling business lines, they should have way higher pickup rates. If you're calling personal lines, they should have lower pickup rates, because businesses during business hours, they pick up. So if they have low pickup rates, there's an issue either with your phone number or with the person themselves, where it's like, wait a second, are you calling at the wrong time? You calling like the wrong person? Like, what's going on? So their pickup rate should be higher for businesses. Then we have meaningful conversations, because just because somebody picked up doesn't mean anything. Somebody picks up and, we talk to them and say, hey, I forgot why I'm calling you. And then they hang up. Well, now you're like, wait a second, why'd I have this many pickups but my meaningful conversations went down? So meaningful conversations means you're getting to the point where you're able to offer, you're able to get to, for the sake of clarity, oops, we're going to go meaningful conversations. We're going to track the clear offer. Okay. So we have that. That one, really good question. I'm going to go over that. And then we have our offer rate. So how many people they actually offered it. So this is, we get to clarify Y dialing. This is usually the metric we're going to use, also known as the clear offer, as we're calling it. And then we have the offer itself. So how many people they offered to actually, the proposal. So this is proposal. Let me make this really clear for you guys. We have offer, and we have, and then we have sign up or scheduled. So this is going to be the conversion. So an example would be, just for simplicity purposes, we have a table, and I'm going to do this, insert a row below, insert a row below. And I hope this guy is helping you guys. This is stuff I had to learn. Man, I learned a lot of this from scratch. I'll put it that way. So there's a lot of learning lessons here. So we have like the date, we have dials, we have, this is how an Excel sheet's going to look, because that's all you're using, Excel or Google Sheets. I'm just forgetting we're using technology nowadays. So conversations, meaningful convos, we have the offers, and then we have offers proposal, by the way, and then we have sign up, or we're going to call this conversion, just to be clear. You guys define what that is. So we have this here, and then we have insert row column left. Whoops. Yeah, I guess we'll just keep it simple. We're going to assume there's one person. So 0601 2026. Oops. We have 0602 2026. So let's just say we have 240 dials, and then we have, I want to make this as clean as possible for you guys, so you can literally, you guys can sell this as a course if you want. All right, 190. So I'm gonna give you guys some examples right here. This will help. And then we have, let's just say 100 pickups. And then we had 20 meaningful, 10 offers, and then we have 5 booked, right? So offer to conversion, 50% is pretty good. Meaningful conversations usually drop off because they may not get a hold of the decision maker, because we're talking about B2B sales. And we have this going on, okay? Now you have this dramatic drop. So it could be a Sunday, or it could be the fact that they had 100 pickups, but they had 50 meaningful conversations. So now this has gone up. So because it's gone up, what's happened is they've had less time to do this. So these are correlated. As this increases, this typically should go down, because you have more longer conversations. Because let's be realistic. If they say, oh yeah, I had 50 meaningful conversations, nobody signed up, you're like, well, maybe you should slow down and actually talk to them more, right? So these are usually correlated to each other, okay? Now pickups, same thing. The pickups should increase with the amount of dials, but it also varies on the time of day, depends on your phone number, depends on what. Have you called the business before? So there's all these variables, but you start seeing how this can be the same thing. So now we offer 10 people, and no, this would be way higher. So we should be offering usually 80%. And so let's just say it's 35 people offered. So now we booked 15 people. So you start seeing, now we're looking at, optimum numbers. So this is what it looked like. And then when they show, for example, let's make another chart for you guys, just for the sake of completeness. We're going to have this right here. Same thing. So we have scheduled, showed, offered, and we're going to add another column to the right. And then we have closed, okay? Or we'll do signups, so you don't feel too salesy. So we have this. We had, for example, we have 5 and 10. So let's just say we have this right here. And I'm going to show you what usually happens, so you can actually pre-handle this beforehand, so you're not going to get blindsided. So sometimes people don't show up. So what we're going to do is, let's just say we have, for the sake of completeness, we have 5 offered, and we had 2 people sign up. Okay. Now we have this day. I'm going to insert a row below, and we're going to do 603 2026, because this is a common scenario. We have 10 and 5 showed up, 5 offered, 2. So then you got to ask yourself, well, wait a second, what happened to the 5 people? Well, now they're all rescheduled. And out of these, so I'm going to go back down, 3 of them showed up. Okay, 3, 1. Okay, so then this is for data accountability. So you're going to be doing this yourself, because you're not going to have that much volume in the beginning. Then we have 06, 04, 2026. Then we have 2 scheduled, 2 showed up, 2 offered, and 2 signed up. So when you add these all together, guess what? They all lead to equal numbers. There needs to be equilibrium. Okay. So you start seeing how over the course of all this, we have 10 plus 5, that's 15. This looks like what? We had 5, 10, 5, 2, 15. It looks like we had 27, 15, 20, 22 people, but that's not the case. So one other column for in-person stats, this will probably help you out, is we're going to have booked. Okay. So this will help you out because you might get confused. So let's just say we booked 5, 10, 0, and 0. So all these should equal out at the end of the month or end of the week or whatever time period you're doing. But these are going to be the data you're going to do. Okay. Now, when it comes down to times a day to dial, this is going to be the last thing we cover. It varies. Okay. So I'm going to go over what we don't do. Number one is federal holidays. I'm going off of time. Okay. And then we go to federal holidays and then we avoid off hours. No off hours, because obviously you would think this is the case. No off hours. Typically avoid Sundays. That's going to be pretty big also. And then Saturdays, usually what we want to do is stick to the afternoons or early mornings. And then we want to avoid evenings for restaurants. Okay. Saturday afternoon, early mornings, typically avoid Sundays, no off hours, no federal holidays, etc. And then it's going to vary after that. And here's the reason why. Okay. For B2C, because Alan, you are technically your B2C, not in this, but just in general, right? So if you have a social media marketing agency or have an accounting firm or things like that, and you're talking to like individuals that want to get their taxes done, we usually call late afternoons. Those are usually the best, or early mornings because they're usually 9 to 5ers. If you're talking to solopreneur business owners, well, you call during business hours. You want to do earlier in the morning because you'll get a hold of them, or like closer to the evening because they're about to close and they're at that point where they're like, hey, I'm ready for happy hour. Okay. But technically you can dial throughout the day. Okay. So that's why I mentioned for data integrity, when we say dials, don't let somebody confuse you and say, I did 1,000 dials. Like, whoa, we want to look at, hey, how many unique people you spoke to? Because if they call the same business 10 times that day and they pick up once, we need to know that. We need to look at efficiency. And then we got to say, wait a second, why do you have this many dials? So if you want to make it easier for yourself, if you want to, if you're a data nerd like me, then you can say unique dials. And you can have them track that. So they look at the amount of businesses they dial. Okay. So this might be 90 and this might be 50. So we dialed basically a lot of businesses 5 times in a row, some 3 times in a row, et cetera. Okay. And then what we want to do, times of day, dialing time avoidance. That's what we're going to call it because this helps you define it, because dialing time of day actually varies across what type of businesses. If it's a law firm, for example, probably don't want to call them on Friday. They're probably not even there. So like there's all these different things. And then look at state regulation. Okay. So we call this the TCPA, the Telephone Communications Protection Act, because again, you guys need to be compliant, but this is very big. You guys can look it up, look up an AI summary on this, but this is usually B2C consumer, but there are some things like, hey, don't be texting after hours. Don't, like, you're a telemarketer, don't call 10 times in a row, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So this is going to be the recap, guys.